Peace, good morning. How you doing? How's everybody doing? Um, Came across an interesting article today that I want to share with everybody. Um, Principally because of the fact that millions of people um, could be disadvantaged by um, the watch list that the federal government has created unknowingly. And I'm sharing it because I think there's a lot of things that we have to really think about. There's a lot of implications of this, um, depending on how people wind up on the list, like their inclusion criteria onto the list. So I want to read this article to you and then get your thoughts. This is from the Associated Press. It says the federal government has acknowledged that it shares its terrorist watch list with more than 1,400 private entities, including hospitals and universities, prompting concerns from civil libertarians that those mistakenly placed on the list could face a wide variety of hassles in their daily lives. That's true. The government's admission that it shares the list so broadly comes after years of insistence that the list is generally not shared with the private sector. Ghadir Abbas, a lawyer with the Council on American Islamic Relations, which has filed a constitutional challenge to the government's use of the watch list, called the government's admission shocking. Quote, "We've always suspected there was a private sector dissemination of the terror watch list, but we had no idea the breadth of the dissemination would be so large." On that call while I was live. Um, critics say the watch list is widely overbroad and mismanaged, and that large numbers of people wrongly included on the list suffer routine difficulties and indignities because of their inclusion. All right. The government's admission comes in a class action lawsuit filed in federal court in Alexandria by Muslims who say they regularly experience difficulties in travel, financial transactions, and interactions with law enforcement because they have been wrongly added to the list. The Associated Press is the first to report on the disclosure after reviewing the case documents. Abbas said now that the government has disclosed how many private entities receive access to the terrorist screening database, the official name of the watch list, terrorist screening database, that's the official name of the watch list, and now needs to explain exactly which private entities are receiving it and what they're doing with it. He's asked the judge to require the government to be more specific. A hearing is scheduled for Friday. Are universities taking TSDB status, the terrorist screening database status, into account in making admission or disciplinary decisions? Are Inova Alexandria Hospital building security personnel screening visitors against the TSDB and deny entry to listees? Is Motorola screening its software engineers who work on cellular infrastructure equipment against the TSDB and firing listees? Plaintiffs have no idea. Abbas and co-counsels Lena Marsri and Carolyn Homer wrote in a brief submitted Friday. In depositions and in court hearings, government officials had denied until very recently that the watch list compiled by the FBI's Terrorist Screening Center is shared with private entities. At a pretrial hearing in September, government lawyer Dina Roth told U.S. District Judge Anthony Trenga that the Terrorist Screening Center does not work with private partners and that the watch list status itself is considered law enforcement sensitive information and is not shared with the public. Okay? Um, Despite that assurance, the judge ordered the government to be more specific about how it disseminates the watch list. Tranger said the plaintiffs are entitled to the information to try to prove their case that inclusion on the list caused them to suffer real-world consequences. In response to Tranger's order, TSC Deputy Director of Operations Timothy Groff filed a written statement earlier this month acknowledging that 1,441 private entities have received permission to access the watch list. Gross says those private entities must be in some way connected to the criminal justice system. He cited police forces at private universities, hospital security staff, and private correctional facilities are examples. It's not clear what restrictions are placed on how private institutions use the list. The FBI did not respond to emails and phone calls seeking comment. We only have a few more lines to go. Hugh Handeside, attorney with the ACLU's National Security Project, said the government's disclosure is noteworthy and that it corroborates what we've long suspected, but it still leaves unanswered several important questions. He said more information is needed to know how private entities use the information. The likelihood of stigma or adverse consequences is increased every time the government shares the list with a private organization, a foreign government, or any other agency, he said. The exact number on the list is kept secret by the government, but it acknowledged in an early lawsuit that it adds hundreds of thousands of names to the list every year. It also emphasized that names are routinely removed from the list. In some quarters, the government has been criticized for failing to widely disseminate the list to private agencies who might need to know about terrorist suspects. A 2007 report from a government watchdog criticized the government for just that. Abbas, though, said the problem with disseminating the list is that the list itself is so faulty and littered with so many innocent names that, for all practical matters, the list is merely a compilation of innocent Muslims who have never committed a crime. It's a fool's errand, Abbas said of the watchlist's purported goal. They are trying to predict among the innocent which people will be terrorists. That is impossibility. All right, and so that's the end of the article. But I think the article, which is why I decided to go ahead and do a live on this, I think the article provides a lot of valid, legitimate, and credit-worthy questions and scrutiny. Because, one, you have to ask yourself, what is the inclusion criteria? What are the markings in which a person ends up on the list? Two, who is in charge of putting people on the list? Like, who are the people that are putting people on the list? Three, the people that are evaluating the citizens of the United States and putting people on this list, we have to evaluate and see if they have any bias or racial or racist tendencies, racist history, because you can easily see how that can influence who winds up on the list. If a person has a bias towards a particular group of people, whether it be Muslim, most of this article, if you pay attention to, is really centered around the Muslim sector of the United States citizenry. But we've seen that you have what's called the black identity extremists. So those people that feel very firm or strong about their black experience in America, and they happen to speak boldly about it, they may be placed on a list. It's not that they are terrorists, but it's just, look, as a black person in America, we have a unique experience. We may be passionate about making sure that we receive redress for the wrongs that have been, the wrongs and the atrocities that have occurred to us, our ancestors, that have not been fully addressed, have not been repaired. And because you say that, you may be considered a black identity extremist and thus end up on a list with Muslim terrorists. What was the other group when they were boycotting Wall Street? What's the name of the group again? It was, y'all know what I'm talking about, but Occupy Wall Street. So you may have like people that were observed during the Occupy Wall Street. They may be like, look, you know what? This guy has the potential, or this girl has the potential, and has terroristic tendencies. Let's put her on the list. Although the person may not necessarily have committed any crime, although the person may not be a participant, although the person may not be conducting any active transactions or activities that are terroristic in nature, it may be just the pure passion in which a person speaks, or the fact that they attend certain rallies and protests. The alert and bells and whistles go off, and you put a person on this list. Does it make them a terrorist? No. And so the fact that they're sharing this with over 1,400 private entities, from universities to hospitals and things of that nature, it brings up a lot of concerns for citizens of the United States, and I definitely think the American Civil Liberties Union should speak up about this, because You then think about how people may become disadvantaged or blackballed in society, which can affect their ability to get adequate housing or to purchase a house or to rent. Um, you think about, can a person be denied um, school admission all the way from um, elementary school to colleges and institutions because either it's a young child or the parents of the young child. Their parents may be associated. You think of people that are looking for jobs. You have people that are maybe applying for a job and their names pop up on this list and the person may not have done anything. It's just I have a strong passion. Some people that have a strong passion, for instance. Um, when you had people that were marching against the pipeline that was going down through the Dakotas about 2 summers ago, um, basically saying, look, that's not right that you have this oil pipeline coming through the Sioux Nation reservation. And that's not right. That's a humanitarian issue. This is this people's property, but you want to allow a corporate entity to come through private land, especially land reserved for indigenous natives, that were wronged at the hands of the U.S. government. The little bit of land that they do have, you want to allow a corporate entity to come through and put a pipeline down. People may have protested that. Because they may have protested that, they may be on a watch list. We don't know because the watch list is private except for who they decide to share it with. Now, does it make you a terrorist because you protested? No. Does it make you a suspect to get on that list? Yes. And so these are the things that I think are legitimate concerns that need to be fleshed out and scrutinized. And I think that now that this article has came out, it really needs to get more steam, and the government should be a lot more clear with what they're doing, what the inclusion criteria is, and really be forthright about how this will, and does impact Americans across the country. I think whenever you put a list together that's not public knowledge and the people don't know the inclusion criteria, that's a very, very, very that road right there is a very slippery slope into totalitarianism and things of that nature. So just wanted to share that with y'all, and have some more videos we'll talk about later. All right, take care. Peace.